Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
And we welcome you to this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. I'm your host, Eric Lopez here. Jeff, unfortunately, in the hospital. We are glad to report he's doing better. But this is the 2021 UCF season, Drew, where everybody's banged up.
Oh, man, everyone's injured, going down or something. So, I mean, Jeff's just another one on a long list of UCF guys that have been put on the shelf.
It's been that type of year. Of course, that's Drew Glukoff filling in, rightfully so, ready to go. We're going to talk about UCF's upcoming game against Memphis. I'm going to ask Drew his thoughts. We're at the halfway point, believe it or not, of the football season. We know what the negatives are, but what are some of the positives he sees and things he's looking forward to the second half of the season? We'll talk about that, and we're going to be talking more about the Memphis game with our guest, Memphis Spence, will join us later on the program, plus the Olympics, why UCF Volleyball is winning and yet dropping in the RPI. We'll explain all that coming up on this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Of course, you could follow us. Make sure you subscribe on our YouTube page and like us there at Black and Gold Banneret. We have constant interviews and video content there. We also, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. You got UCF_Banneret on Twitter as well as on Facebook. All right, not a moment too soon. Let's begin here, Drew. Obviously, we all know what happened at Cincinnati. Cincinnati wiped out UCF 56-21. You and I, alongside Bryson Turner, we spent an hour and 45 minutes, I couldn't believe it, on night shift, breaking that game down, among other stuff. You can watch that episode right now, by the way, on our YouTube page, as well as on blackandgoldbanneret.com. So we're not going to get into that game. Everybody else is talking about, we know what went wrong. Anybody that's listening right now, watch the game. They know what went wrong. I want to
what went right? You know what went right?
What
no
went
material
right?
Injuries.
There you go. There's a positive from the Cincinnati game. So this team is 3-3 now, going into this home game against Memphis, Drew. I kind of want to do some quick blitzes here, halfway point. Injuries is obviously the biggest disappointment for this season. Injuries. That's going to be the definition of this 2021 UCF football season. Other than injuries, what has been your biggest disappointment so far in this team? 6 games in.
My disappointment is more for the seniors that either are in their last eligibility or have used their extra year. It's disappointing for them because this was supposed to be their last hurrah, and it's really gone up in smoke. Disappointment in players that have left the program, either near the season starting or since the season has started. Obviously, everyone has a reason, everyone has a story, and you always wish them luck, but it's disappointing. You have a plan, and you don't want to see that plan go south, which is kind of what we did. And the other disappointing part is you look at the fan base, and you got to understand where they're coming from. They're very upset. They had high expectations, and they've been kind of taken for a wild ride, just because of things have gone wrong, and that pain and frustration and anger is kind of going all over the place. And, unfortunately, it's got to go somewhere. And you don't want it to be there because these players are trying hard. On the plus side, no one's quit. They're still trying. Even, quarterback goes down, freshman quarterback Mikey King comes in, no quit. Makes a mistake, comes back out the next drive, tries again. There's no quit on this team. Isaiah Bowser comes back last week. He's obviously still not 100%. No quit. He got hit a number of times, got, driven back, 0-yard gain, maybe 1-yard gain, got back up next play. That's a winning mentality. And the results will eventually show up. But, the fans have an expectation. It's not being met. And a lot of, the coaches, they're getting the brunt of it, and as they should, because they're the ones who make the big bucks. But the truth is, you need horses to win the race, and a lot of your best guys, your best talent is out, and you have a lot of inexperience. If there should be any anger and frustration vented, it should be towards the prior coaching staff that kind of set this up. There was no depth coming into 2021 in a number of key positions. And unfortunately, those key positions, guys got hurt. And we're seeing the results of that. That's not a current staff caused issue. They're just kind of rolling with it because what else are you going to do? That's a prior staff issue that allowed it to happen. So I understand everyone's disappointment. I'm disappointed. You're disappointed. Jeff's disappointed.
Yeah, he's literally in the hospital. That's how disappointed he is.
He's so disappointed.
It's either that or Aaron Boone getting an extension from the Yankees. I haven't been able to figure that out yet. All right, let's be a little positive. What has been some positives you've liked so far from the first half of the season? I know the injuries have derailed a lot of stuff, but there are some positives, no, that you've liked?
Oh, yes. As I said before, there's been no quit. The defensive backfield, which has been much maligned from 2020 into 2021, especially when you lose, Aaron Robinson and Richie Grant to the draft, and then Tay Gowan, who opted out, also to the draft. You're seeing better results as the season has worn on. The last 2 weeks against two quarterbacks that could generate a lot of yards, they've held them in check. Holton Ahlers held in check. Desmond Ridder held in check. It wasn't the defensive backfield and their passing defense that's really hurt the team. It's been the run defense from key injuries on the defensive line that's really, really hitting hard. So that's something I'm very pleased with. You're seeing depth in the running back game and development. Now you don't have a bruiser because Bowser was out for a while, and you saw the results. Defenses didn't respect the run. It took some time to adjust things. Johnny Richardson starting to make bigger plays. You saw Trillian Coles come back from an Achilles injury that kept him out of all last year, scored a touchdown, was able to celebrate with his family on that one. Mark Anthony Richards coming back from injury, scores a winning touchdown against East Carolina. His mom was there to see that. Those are feel-good moments. And then add that with the Our Time season on ESPN Plus that, this is the third season of that show. They could have picked other schools. They picked UCF. And I have to say, the struggling season has turned out, in my opinion, to be better for content than one that they would just be walking over teams. You're seeing a lot more of the raw emotion that comes from defeat and having to bring players back up, maintain their confidence, and roll with the punches that come from injuries. The episode last week with Kalia Davis, being hurt in the locker room, and that raw emotion that came out, that was probably my favorite part of the whole series, other than hearing me be you.
You sounded great. Yeah, I never sounded better. Never sounded better. I will look forward to the next episode. All right, let's get into the Memphis game. Memphis 4-3 on the season. They kind of been up and down a little bit. A dynamic offense. They got a new quarterback. Good running game. They opened the season. They beat Nichols. They beat Arkansas State in Arkansas State in a shootout, 55-50. Beat Mississippi State at home, 31-29. You're thinking, wow, this could be a good year. Then they lose to UTSA, lose at Temple. That's the one that I think if you're a Memphis fan, you're disappointed. Lost at Tulsa, beat Memphis recently. Your thoughts here on this game here as you'll be covering it?
Well, we know losing at Tulsa is nothing new. As UCF fans, we know all about losing at Tulsa in games that you probably should have won. But, this is a Memphis team that's still kind of figuring itself out. It has great offense. I mean, you talk about Seth Hennigan, over 2,100 yards passing. I mean, that's huge. Brandon Thomas, over 600 yards rushing. And you have a pair of receivers. Yeah, you have Calvin Austin, who's the top target, over 850 yards receiving. And Sean Dykes, who's been there since, the dinosaurs ruled and roamed the earth. Still there. I mean, I think his 2016 was his first season at Memphis, and he's still there, but he's second in the team in receiving. This with a freshman quarterback, as we know, things sometimes don't quite go the way you want and when you want. And I think that's what happened with Memphis. All three of those losses were single score losses. The ball bounces a different way. They win all those games. Granted, if you take away their first game against Nichols and the last game against Navy, every game they played has been a single score game. So they play a lot of close games, either up to your competition or down to your competition. And I think this UCF one has a chance of being a similar one. Their weaknesses are UCF's strength. You talk about, the run defense. They can give up yards. UCF's strength is in the run game. If Bowser is still playing, which as far as I know, he's going to be ready to go and even better than last week, along with the speed of Richardson, you've got a great thunder and lightning combination that's going to be a lot for a defense to try to contain. The key is the less Mikey Keene has to carry the team, the better off the team will be. They go down quick against Cincinnati. There's really not, and you're just completely outclassed basically everywhere on the field. There's really not much you can do. You're going through the motions. You're making sure your developmental plan stays on track. You don't panic. You don't have to really deviate because this game was already over. The game was over when it was 14-0. And I think that actually benefits them. They played conservative, close to the vest, because this is when UCF's second half season really gets going.
You're right. I think this is, and I think the Memphis's defense has struggled. Now you say that, Mikey Keene to protect him, but, Memphis has struggled against the pass. I do wonder, now they're giving up an average of 3.7 yards per carry defensively, Memphis is, but, they're giving up a chunk of yardage passing wise. Like they're giving up a total of 7 yards per pass, 10 yards per catch, nearly 278 yards passing. They've given up 16 touchdown passes. At some point, don't we got to see more from Mikey Keene here from a long-term standpoint that he can throw the football against a Memphis defense that's a little suspect against the pass?
Well, it comes down to building confidence. And it was hard last week. You're playing against arguably one of the best secondaries in the country with perhaps the best corner in the country in Sauce Gardner. It really limits what you can do. So a lot of people, a lot of fans have vented frustrations that there's a lot of short passes going on. But I can tell you, they're not always all running short routes. There's guys running short, medium, and long routes. The quarterback is making the choice to throw to the short man. This is a confidence thing. It's about building chemistry. His best two passes, he had one on a wheel route to Johnny Richardson that they tried 2 weeks ago. Richardson dropped it. This week, he caught it. It was right on the money. That's chemistry and timing. You have to understand the speed of your receiver that you're leading towards. There are times where he throws behind his receiver and it became an interception. That's where he doesn't have the chemistry down with his receivers, partly why he's sticking to shorter stuff. The pass to Nate Craig Myers was a great one that skirted the sideline. However, based on the fact that Keene rolled out to the left and Craig Myers recognized it and took his route from cutting to the right back to the left, allowed him to separate from the defender, it wasn't a covered pass. He really, Keene really tries to avoid throwing into traffic. And part of that is a confidence thing. Part of that is a chemistry thing. And it just takes time and exposure. But I can tell you, the coaches know more than we do. They see how they practice. And the practice, you practice at 80%, you play at 100%, especially on defense, because you're not trying to hurt your own guys. But, if you're struggling in practice on middle and deep third passing, I can understand why you're going to be settling for shorter routes in game time. And in the end, it's the quarterback who's making the choice. So it's not necessarily the play calling as much as it's just the confidence in Keene. And you just have to keep building that up. And that takes time.
Obviously, defensively, they're going to have their hands full. Seth Hennigan, interestingly, Hennigan and Mikey Keene, same class. I believe I read where one of them was ranked 68th as far as quarterback ranking and the recruiting. The other one was 70. Hennigan obviously has thrown off to a good start, 2,153 yards passing, 16 touchdowns on the season. Calvin Austin, dynamic receiver. He'll be in the NFL, 857 yards, 8 touchdowns. Sean Dykes, who we all know very too well, 441 yards on 27 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Austin has 50 receptions to lead the team. And then, of course, they always have a great running game. And another great running back, Brandon Thomas, seems to be the next guy, 655 yards, 7 touchdowns. What's the key here for Travis Williams and his defense here to have some success against this potent Memphis offense?
Well, you just look, all you got to do is look at Hennigan at 2,100 plus yards. Passing defense is going to have to definitely going to have to have another great game. And if the last two are any indication, granted, Ehlers and Ritter have not thrown as far as Hennigan has. This is an offense that can put a lot of yards on the board, but they don't score as many points as they do relative to the amount of offense they have out there. They average 35.9 points a game, which you would think with a quarterback that's just throwing the ball absolutely everywhere and a running back that's averaging 6 yards a carry, is well over 600 yards on the season, you would have more points on the board. So it looks like they have a little bit of trouble finishing drives, and they do have a turnover issue. Their offense averages 1.6 a game. They definitely have they don't have as many takeaways, so they definitely are on the wrong side of the turnover ratio. They got to exploit those mistakes. UCF has to create and exploit mistakes, and you can do that with a freshman quarterback. It's only thrown 4 picks, but fumbles, they happen. They average at least 1 fumble lost a game, and you gotta create that and take advantage of it.
Should be an interesting one. Friday night, ESPN2 is where the game will be broadcast. It's probably going to be the last good TV time slot UCF has for a while, maybe the whole year. Because, folks, you're going to probably have a lot of noon games and probably some ESPN Plus games coming up. In fact, that Temple game in a couple weeks will be on ESPN Plus. Let's do this. What do you think is a reasonable expectation as far as how final win-loss record for this team, not counting the bowl game? If they make a bowl game,
I think they'll make a bowl game. I think the most likely record will either be 8-4 or 7-5. They're currently 3-3. I don't expect them to beat SMU. Every other game is winnable, but I think they're going to stumble at one point somewhere. But they have UConn and South Florida to back end the season. I think both of those are very winnable games. Temple and Tulane, very winnable games, and Memphis. Which I think is going to be the toughest team they play the remainder of the season out of those 5. And if they can hit the ground running and really set some positive momentum against the Tigers, I think it really helps them set up the rest of the way.
I agree. This is why I think this is a big game from that standpoint. And I've said that even for the last couple of weeks. This is the game we're going to learn a lot about this team. Is this team going to finish strong on a positive note? Gus has talked about that even in his post game against Cincinnati and even his media availability. Or does this team struggle against Memphis? And now you're thinking, man, this could be a struggle here down the stretch here the second half. I'm very interested to see how they come out. I have 2 words for you, though, Drew, why I'm very optimistic about this game.
Space game.
No, although that's your
not
2
the
words.
2 words.
No, that's
sorry,
your
that
2
was
words.
my 2 words.
Yeah, those are your 2 words. You and everybody else all excited about the space game.
Space game.
By the way, I believe they're doing auctions for that. Are they? Did I just see that right in my inbox?
They have, but every year they open it up at $1,000. And as much as I love to invest in my closet, I don't invest that much on a singular piece. Now there's a few $1,000s worth of investments in there. But not on a single piece. So you're definitely not going to get me on that. But, I'm patient.
Well, the jerseys you're mentioning, the space jerseys they'll be wearing this Friday will be for auction the following week. However, no helmets will be included in the auction this year.
I wonder if they're going to give the helmets to the people whose names are on it, because that would be really cool.
That I don't know. I can tell you that the set will include the jersey and the pants from the Mission V space game, as well as authentic space helmet decals. So there you go. So you'll get more information out on that. So what do you grade this jersey real quick? And I don't want, because we got Memphis Spence coming up here to talk more about this game, but give me your grade on the space jersey, UCF in space game deal.
Well, outside of the first one, they've hit a home run on all of these. I mean, they're all good in different ways. Like 2019 had the best helmet by far. I think 2018 was the best package top to bottom. I put 2021 second on that. I find the more white look very clean. And I think the creativity they put in with the numbers being for the different space shuttle missions and having the names of all the UCF alums that had something to do with NASA, I think is the coolest aspect of this whole uniform. That took a lot of deep thought and going outside of the box and doing something just really, really cool. And I think that sets this aside from 2020 or 2019s, because while 2019 had this hand-painted moon helmet, which I think was supposed to be used for 2018, but it took too long. Obviously this didn't require that, but this was something unique, and you can replicate a moon helmet, but you're not going to replicate having those people on that helmet. That's a unique UCF thing that can't be taken away. You can put someone else's name on it, but it's not going to be those people. And I think that sets it aside ahead of especially 2020 on the coolness factor of the overall uniform. But I find it to be a very clean look. I think they're embracing the Citronaut aspect a little bit more.
Shout out JP Gilbert, the president of the Citronaut fan club there.
President, secretary, and any other and member at large. I mean, he runs that place like no one's business. But let's be honest, they're not going to change from the Knights to the Citronauts.
By the way, JP, though, for the record, Drew, as we're recording, is wearing a Citronaut hat. So
I am wearing a Citronaut hat. I happen to love the combination of the Canaveral blue and black, but I just don't see it replacing the black and gold, nor do I see Nitro being replaced by a giant orange with a head.
Okay. I want to get to something that JP brought up, because Jeff was taking questions from the hospital on social media, which I don't know.
I was bored. What do you expect? He had nothing to do.
Whatever. All right. We'll get to the subject they got into real quick. But the two words I was thinking from my standpoint, Roy Philpott. Roy Philpott will be calling the game on ESPN2 with Andre Ware and Paul Kerkateri. He's filling in for Jason Benetti, who is filling in for Joe Testator this weekend, who's calling boxing. Why I bring up Roy Philpott? UCF's never lost a football game that Roy Philpott has called.
Oh, there's a fun fact.
Don't you feel good? Yeah. So that'll be the game on Friday night, ESPN2. All right, real quick before we go to Memphis Spence, because we're going to touch on this with Mr. Spence, who's not real happy about this, but some reports that the American is going to expand. They're basically raiding Conference USA. They will be taking Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Charlotte, UAB, UTSA, who's ranked. Go figure. And Charlotte. Now, JP Gilbert got into it with you and Jeff.
I would say get into it. That's not fair to either him or us. It wasn't getting into it. He asked a fair question. Obviously, a lot of UCF fans are not fans of Mike Oresco, and
he's at the president of that, and
I gave a major thumbs down on this real.
You and I talked about this on social media, so I want to touch on this quick, because I will touch on this later in the show, because I think this has a major impact on men's soccer programs, UCF, and I'll explain why later. However, let's just keep it to the present. Explain for those you don't like this because what?
Well, and this, but we'll touch on where you kind of gave a really good point on this.
Yeah.
They didn't go after the best teams. They didn't go after brands. They went after markets.
Right.
The only best brand that they really pulled in was UAB, who had the complete package. They have a market in Birmingham, which since UAB lost their football program and then brought it back, the amount of support that the city of Birmingham now puts behind UAB has jumped astronomically. It doesn't hurt that the Board of Regents has been exposed for the corrupt SOBs that they are and don't meddle in UAB's business anymore. They have a brand new stadium. They've had past success. They've been the best overall football team in Conference USA on an average base since 2013 when the realignment took place. Granted, they lost their program for a couple of years, came back, and they've been on fire since. Then you look at a couple of the other programs. FAU, I think, is a potential-based one. It replaces UCF. I think it was a smart pick. It was one of the top ones that I had marked down. The X Factor one was really UTSA. And I didn't think too much of bringing them in originally, but some people made a very valid point. San Antonio likes the Roadrunners. There's a market there. There's not much competition, and there's room to grow. There's some upside there. What I don't like is the rest of the moves. I think UNT is kind of a 50-50. They've put into facilities that had past success, but they really haven't done too much as of late. And then Charlotte and Rice, this turned it from, okay, I give it a C to like a D. I mean, this is a waste of space. I mean, you don't bring in these guys unless your corporate overlords tell you to do it, which is what happened. I would have looked at if all things being equal, a team like Coastal Carolina or Appalachian State or Louisiana should have gotten very heavy consideration. They should have gone after them. But as you made a very valid point, they went where ESPN wasn't.
That's correct. And that's the biggest key. I think people kind of forget on this. Like, I actually don't disagree with you about going into the Sun Belt. If this was all, forget TV partnerships and all that, I actually agree with you. I think there are some things they could have gotten from the Sun Belt. I think you could have plucked from the Sun Belt. I'm shocked they're going 6. I thought 4 would be good enough. 6 surprises me.
I think they're afraid of losing more teams.
I agree.
Down to.
Well, and it could be the team that we're playing this week too. But look, ESPN owns the rights to our broadcast partners with the Sun Belt. They're doing very well from a TV number standpoint and from a streaming standpoint on ESPN Plus, which is very important in all this. Very important. And UCF is clear, and ESPN is trying to get as much property for ESPN Plus. So what you're going to do, you're not going to weaken a property that you already have. What you're going to do,
you're not having to pay for.
Exactly. You already have.
The pay up.
Right. You've got a good deal with the Sun Belt. And I would argue they have a good deal with the American. And so what you do is you go after a league that you don't have. And what you don't have is Conference USA. Look, they tried to get the Mountain West. Didn't work out. The Mountain West schools decided to stay. So the next option was CUSA. I don't think that's an accident. And if you look at what Pete Thamel wrote for Yahoo, the current members of the American under this deal is going to keep their $7 million a year pay. It's going to be the new members. They're going to get shortcut in the immediate future, which is normal, by the way. We're going to get shortcut in the Big 12 when we join in the first couple years.
Right. First couple years until that new contract kicks in.
I honestly believe the Sun Belt was never an option. It's one of those don't touch because it's like your family members. And so they raided the Conference USA. They wanted to poke this, just absolutely annihilate Conference USA. They have done that.
And it was about preventing those Texas schools from going to the Mountain West, because they did say North Texas and a couple others, I think Rice was one of them, did reach out. Yes, I agree. So I think there's a strategic there. They have the Texas markets. They got the Florida markets. That's not just TV. It's recruiting too. Let's not lose that aspect of it. So that under those premises, look, like you and I, the only thing that you and I really disagree on is Charlotte. I actually like Charlotte. They're 4-2 this year. I think they're going to play UAB in the Conference USA Championship game. That's a program on the rise. Mike Hill is the AD. I think it's an up and coming AD. They're built facilities. They're spending money on facilities. They have a great market. I love that area.
I think Charlotte, sometimes you got to bet on prospects, on upside potential. Where I do agree with you is I don't know what the upside is of Rice. I've been to Rice. That's a baseball school. Nobody cares about football there. There's one where I would have taken out. I would have liked to have seen, let's just say the Sun Belt is not an option. I would have gone with a Marshall, for example. Or, what's funny here, Drew? If this was
gone with Marshall too.
I would have gone with Marshall over Rice. And I agree with you on that. I think too much is made of the markets. That's where I disagree with Mike. I think too much is made of college sports is not based on big markets. It's not. It's not. The majority of big markets don't care about college football. They don't.
That varies. That varies. The thing is, the schools themselves usually are not in those big markets. Like Houston. Houston is a Texas market. University of Texas is not in Houston.
Well, New York, like Tulane, which I was amused that Tulane's all angry about this. Like, look, guys, you're part of the problem, to be honest with you. They're in New Orleans, but they're not. It's an LSU market. Birmingham is the big market in college football. They watch everything. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. But I do think Charlotte has upside. I would have gone with a Marshall. You know what's up? But I'd say why it's ironic is if this was going on 11 years ago, Drew, you know who would have been a team that would have been a lock for the American?
Southern Miss.
Yeah. And I think they were a great football program when they had Larry Fedora and company. And they have great tradition there. It's just funny how timing plays out in all this and how short memories we have or short time, attention span, because UTSA, you could argue, is only benefiting from this year. Like, it seems like it's a bandwagon move. Oh, they're top 25 right now. Let's grab them. They're in Texas. It may not be true, but it seems that way.
It does. It does seem that way, but that was part of that whole Mountain West box in. They're trying to box them in.
Yes.
And from that, okay, I get where they're coming from that. I still disagree on Charlotte. You're taking a flyer on FAU. You're already kind of doing that. At that point, I would have stuck with 4 teams.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that.
Become a bit of potential dead weight. I think Florida Atlantic will probably jump above South Florida. They've got better facilities. Think about it. They've got better facilities. They've got better leadership. They've invested more. They've got a great athletic director who's related to some guy who used to be here. Danny White's brother, I believe it was Mike White.
Yeah.
I know he has another brother who's a coach at Florida. I sometimes get
Mike White's the Florida coach, actually. So
okay, then is it Brian White?
I think that's the answer there. How do we not? Brian White. That's correct.
Brian. Okay. I get the two.
A lot of Whites, man, in that family.
A lot of Whites, but Brian White's done a good job there. He's specifically following the UCF model. It works. It's worked. And so they're following that. So while they're still on the, it's still a flyer because they could fall on their face. I think they will end up being the best program out of the state of Florida within just a handful of years once they switch conferences. Texas is always strong. They're mitigating their losses there. And, the conference offices are there. You're losing Houston, who's doing really well. There's a possibility that SMU can one day move. That's a future play. Okay, I understand that. I mean, UNT, it's a 50-50.
I'm not as sold on North Texas. I'm just defending Charlotte because I've talked to people there. Mike Hill used to work at Florida. They're building the facilities up there. That's got a lot of promise. I agree. North Texas Rice, I think, are very questionable what their long-term deal there.
I'm easier about North Texas than I am about Charlotte just because North Texas has done something. Charlotte, it's even more so than FAU, is a complete flyer. They've had one winning season in their entire program history. 10 years ago, they didn't even have a football program. It's been gone since 1948. So a whole new program comes out.
Program. That's right.
Comes into fruition. They joined, Conference USA, and they had 1 year with 7 wins. I mean, that's their best season. We talked about comparing them in Coastal Carolina, when we were talking, and Coastal Carolina did a lot, when they were in the FCS level. That's partially what pushed them up. And there is an adjustment period in between, but they've shown more success. And while I know Sunbelt's not touchable, Charlotte hasn't done it. It's all based on faith.
We'll see. We'll put stock on that for now. The good news is it's not our problem.
Yeah, not our problem. And,
we're moving on.
And JP, because we talk. I give this expansion a big thumbs down by the Americans.
I know he thinks we're like a Resco apologist here. All we've done, we've defended something.
How I see it. I liked the Mountain West attempt because it was thinking outside the box. It was more of an offensive move than a defensive move. It was a long shot. It failed. They moved on. But I actually like that move. If it worked, that would have been the coup. But it is what it is.
And as I tweeted,
USA raid.
Right. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, as I tweeted out, it's not like Notre Dame is available to come here. All right. I think people are acting like, I don't know what people were thinking he could get. Like, we could disagree on certain things, but it wasn't like they were going to get this big fish. All right.
No, not at all.
And I think that's unrealistic.
No chance.
Yeah. And I think that part I think is unfair. We could critique the selections. I agree. I like the Sun Belt selections, but again, I think the broadcast partners had a lot to say about that.
And I think what it comes down to, I think ESPN said, hey, if you go to Conference USA only, we'll maintain the pay here for the remaining 8, and we'll increase the amount by X $2-3 million per school that you would give these other guys,
right,
and maintain the rest of it.
And
I think that's what it came down to, because otherwise there was already provisions in place to renegotiate the contracts down.
Correct.
And I think that's partly what it comes down to, is they were just trying to save their own skin.
Yes. And I will defend the league in this. Everybody keeps talking about the long-term deal. If they don't have this long-term deal, who's to say they don't get destroyed like Conference USA just did?
Oh, they would get gutted,
right?
Financially.
Yeah.
At this point, say their contract ended in 2025.
They would be in trouble. So I actually think that's why the long-term deal, and I know people hated it, is going to save this league, whereas Conference USA is not, probably in serious danger.
You compare the Mountain West, and Conference USA's television exposure to the American and the Sun Belt to a lesser extent, and those 2 ESPN properties blow the other 2 out of the water. It's not even close.
Oh, yeah. Ask Boise. Their numbers have plummeted since leaving ESPN. Plummeted. Oh,
absolutely terrible.
And I think that's something to keep in mind as we get into Big 12 TV deal. I still think it's important that ESPN's a part of that deal. I think they will be a part of that deal. I found it amusing that Bob Bowlesby was part of Big 12 Media Day, on Women's Basketball Media Day. You know where that aired?
Where?
ESPN Plus.
Well, I mean, they're still partners for now. So
I'm just saying. There's some mending fences going behind the scenes.
Oh, totally, without a doubt. Right. Then they're kissing and making up, and there'll be some dollars that change hands, and everyone's going to be happy as a result.
All right.
I think. Remember that was before they did the expansion to retool and everything, and everything was kind of freak out mode.
Yes.
So he just kind of freaked out. But let's say, just to put a bow on it, I give the AAC expansion to CUSA a lovely high grade of D, as in delinquent.
I'm not a teacher. I don't grade. I just did this segment. This was a segment tribute to Jeff to getting better. We touched on 2 subjects he loves: realignment, speculation, and space jerseys. That's what he loves. So hopefully that made him feel better. There you go. Space games there. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Memphis Spence, radio host, who Drew knows very well. He's been on the show frequently. We'll give his perspective on the realignment as well as this Memphis-UCF game. Then later, I will address some of the big questions with the UCF Olympic sports as we head down the stretch there in some of their major sports, including postseason aspirations. You're listening to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back here to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric Lopez alongside Drew Glukoff. And Drew, we got one of your closest friends joining us here to talk more about this Memphis-UCF game.
Well, I mean, it's only fitting if you're going to have a game with Memphis, have a guy who knows Memphis to come on board and start talking. Memphis Spence from Sports Radio America. Welcome to the show, man. The tables have turned.
Man, it has been a pleasure, man. Eric, Andrew, thanks for bringing me on. The tables have been turned. This used to be oh no, here comes UCF. Hopefully, can we get close this time? But now we might actually beat UCF. We beat them last year, but that was a COVID year. Was that a fluke? Let's see if Silverfield can pull this off.
The reset button has been hit in more ways than one.
Yes.
Of course, Memphis Spence, radio host, program director. He does it all, Memphis alum. And I want to ask you about this Memphis team this year. What's been your thoughts so far? They're 4-3 on the year. I know they lost some personnel, especially the quarterback. But your thoughts here on the Tigers' 2021 season to this point, kind of an up and down year.
Very much so. What we didn't really expect too much coming into this year. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year until our expectations got heightened by beating Mississippi State. Once that happened, we were like, oh, maybe this isn't a rebuilding year. And then the next game was UTSA, and then we realized, yes, it was. Because our defense is lackluster at best. I don't think we've figured out exactly what to do with the pieces. Got a lot of young guys back there, and we can't stop anybody from scoring. We couldn't even stop Arkansas State, honestly. And when Butch Jones comes in with Arkansas State, and he always wanted to play us with Tennessee, they wouldn't allow him to schedule us because that's a completely different conversation for another day. But he did schedule us with Arkansas State, and he came and he almost beat us with that squad. So we knew our defense. When our defense was giving up 50 points to Arkansas State, we were like, okay, yeah, we need to do something. But we pulled off the Mississippi State win. Some terrible SEC officiating is probably why we won that. It's a rebuilding year with expectations. Just because we beat Mississippi State, we're like, okay, we can get to a bowl game, maybe a respectable one, and that's the way this year is going. I didn't think we would even be 8-4 this year. I think I picked us to be 4th or maybe 5th in the conference, but. Who knows? With UCF, I didn't expect UCF to lose to Navy, so I look at that and I say, oh well, maybe we can beat beat Navy, maybe we can beat UCF and end up 3rd in this conference. I don't think we're no match for Cincinnati, and I don't know who would be other than SMU, but maybe we can go to a respectable bowl game this year. That's
so
probably.
You look at, you talk about those losses. All those losses were close losses.
Yes.
They're all, within a score. That becomes a 50-50 thing. Obviously, one of those to UTSA, who's having a magical run at this point. I believe 7-0, ranked for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Where do you see, when you reviewed those games, where was the area that kind of that 50-50 side that went the wrong way? What area of the team, what I can see that was where the team failed to kind of secure things.
With the UTSA game, the Road Runners did something that I didn't. It was a game plan that I'm pretty sure Silverfield didn't expect either. They ran the ball, I think, 48 times. Maybe it was 50. But it was a record number for that university of carries, and they really wore down our secondary, our linebacker. We're thin at linebacker this year. We got JJ and nobody else. And he was making a lot of tackles. He was going back and forth across the field making tackles. By the 4th quarter, we could feel it. It was like, man, this team's actually wearing down our defense. Defensive mistakes the entire year. The offense is fine. Austin's fine. The offense is going to be fine. Parham on the line. He's probably going to go to the NFL. There's very few issues with our offense right now, especially and that's considering we have a rookie QB. But there's really no. All the problems that we have right now are defensive. Honestly, and mostly circling around our safeties. If you want to drill in on something, if you want to watch them, our corners are all right. If you want to circle, our safety play has been, we need to do something there, honestly.
Well, you mentioned your offense. It's been dynamic. New quarterback, Seth Hennigan. This is a matchup of new quarterbacks, not really what UCF were hoping for, we're preparing for, but Mikey Keene and Seth Hennigan, young quarterbacks. And, of course, your skill position, guys, Calvin Austin jumps out, obviously, 857 yards, 8 touchdowns. And a guy that UCF fans are way too familiar with. He's been there, I think, 100 years. Sean Dykes, is he ever going to graduate or when?
Eventually he will.
Holy mackerel.
I'm not exactly sure, but I know they got a free year for COVID and whatnot, but eventually he will actually graduate and be doing something else. But yeah, the offense is fine. Austin's gonna, well, correct me if I'm wrong. UCF usually has pretty good special teams on the cover side. So
on the cover side, it's not bad. On the kicking side,
yeah. But you're gonna in this game, you're gonna have to watch Austin, because if he gets his hands on the ball, he has true 4.3 speed. Getting a lot of scouts, a lot of NFL scouts are like, hey, is it real? And I was like, yeah, it's real speed. It's real speed. You can see it. You can see him pull away from people. And probably projecting around third round right now, third, fourth round NFL draft pick. But he's only one guy. And UCF has always had decent corners. We got 4 in the league right now, 3 in the league, 4 in the league.
Well, they had 3 drafted, so the cupboard's a little quiet right now.
Yeah. But you've always had pretty good corners. So I'm expecting a lot of zone, a lot of 3-2-6 zone probably, making sure that nobody gets that Austin doesn't get behind the secondary, and taking away those deep threats, because those deep threats are there. And we found out that Seth can throw those balls. We didn't know that coming in. We had we like I said, no expectations coming in, true freshman. Here's the ball, and all of a sudden, rips off a couple of games, gets into the Mississippi State game, and we were like, oh, wait a minute. This guy's not scared. Under pressure, he's making the throws. He gets to his second read a lot faster than most freshman quarterbacks. And if we can keep him on his feet, he usually makes the right one as well. So I'm really impressed by his play this year. And this is going to be a really good matchup, because in years past, I don't know now, but in years past, the defensive selections and defensive sets by UCF have really confused our offense, really confused our quarterbacks. So this is going to be a really good challenge for him, and we'll see whether or not he passes this. If Memphis somehow comes out of the bounce house with a win, I think Seth is on a different trajectory than we originally thought that he would be on at this age.
So you look at the schedule. Obviously, Friday is the game against UCF, but next week is a home, tilt against SMU.
Yes.
Do you think it's possible that the team may overlook UCF a little bit because they got the streak off? That's gone. The losing streak's over. The 13 games no longer exists. UCF having a bit of a rough year this year, unprecedented number of injuries in very key places, but SMU, top 25 team, undefeated, looks to be the number 2 team in the conference. Is there a risk, especially with a young guy running the offense?
Right.
Do you think it's possible that they may be looking a little ahead for the bigger showdown at home versus this one on the road against a team that's been struggling?
So SMU and Memphis have there's a grudge match there, like a real one.
And Memphis hates everyone.
Absolutely. It's always Memphis versus everybody. That's how we say it, everybody. But there's really a grudge match between SMU, because SMU's they have the tradition in football. I mean, there's not really a football team in our conference that has more tradition the Pony Express over there. I mean, they have, I don't know how many Hall of Famers. We just put our first one in, Isaac Bruce. But I don't know how many Hall of Famers they have over there. But they consider themselves the class of the league, even though recently they haven't, recently it's been UCF or Cincinnati, but historically it's always been, SMU, and what they used to do until, the death penalty kind of cut off all their supply, their financial supply there. That being said, I know that they're in a position now where they want to stomp our brains out because of a couple of years ago when we went to the Cotton Bowl. They felt that should have been them, because I think that was a game day. I think there was a college game day, SMU and Memphis there in Memphis, and they came in with expectations of leaving with the win, and it got ugly very quick. And unfortunately, somebody has to win that game. Now, I know there's bad blood. The team that we had the most bad blood with, honestly, is Cincinnati. But there's a lot of bad blood there with SMU recently. And I don't think Silverfield's one of those guys one day at a time. Very unlikely that he overlooks UCF for SMU just because recently, UCF has been the class of the conference, really. So I don't think he overlooks it. Is he already planning for SMU? Yes. Yeah. So, that not an overlook, but I'm sure Silverfield's planning for SMU.
I do want to point out real quick for those listening that there is a connection between Ryan Silverfield and UCF. Mm-hmm. He did have a 2-year stint there as a graduate assistant under George O'Leary, 2006, 2007. Obviously, 2 times they beat Memphis and UCF's first conference championship in 2007. So there's at least a connection there, which I think, adds a little bit of fun to it. Cause I don't think there's anything personal, but he was a grad assistant kind of working his way up, but it just adds a connection to from the school to
it's hard to hate Silverfield. I mean, he's just a likable guy that says the right things. He tries not to, even though he has his own set of coach speak, it's not like Norvell or, because Norvell, there was an edge to him. Silverfield, he's really, salt of the earth type of dude. And I don't, that, and maybe that's why Norvell never beat UCF. I think UCF just got in his head because it's not as if he didn't have the personnel. I mean, some of those 2017, we had the personnel to beat UCF. We just didn't do it. And same thing. I mean, it was just one of those UCF had the personnel to beat us and they did it. And they did it twice that year, as a matter of fact. Once during the season, we were talking about that. I think it was like 40-13.
Yeah, it was beat down.
And then, the 62-55 championship game, which was it's still a classic in my mind. I mean, that may have been one of the best games that I watched all year that year. So, but yeah, Silverfield's a nice dude. He's very down to earth, very focused, very, very focused individual.
I want to ask you about your running backs, because you guys have become running back you. I mean, you've got Antonio Gibson in the NFL. Yep. Tony Pollard is doing great with Dallas there, among others. Gainwell's now in Philadelphia, Kenneth Gainwell. Yeah. I remember D'Angelo Williams. I covered D'Angelo Williams.
He's still getting it, yeah.
What about this year's version? Who's the next one for Memphis
Thomas.
this year?
Thomas.
Talk about your running game.
Well, it all starts behind the line, and that's one of the things that secretly we've been actually upgrading every year. Parham is doing a really good job on that line, and Thomas is probably one of the dudes that he waited for the right opportunity, and there's a lot of guys that are just waiting for the right opportunity, waiting in line to be a feature in that backfield because of what that we've been doing these past few years. It's no secret that we're going to run the ball. I mean, I think everybody knows that we run the ball to set up the pass, set up the deep passes. It's whether or not you can stop that. And there are very few teams that have the personnel that can actually stop the zone blocking that's going on the offensive line. The benefactors are just the running backs. If you've watched any Memphis football the last 5 years, the running backs have huge holes to run through. If they're running off tackle, all three of us could get through the hole at the same time.
Listen, we still have bad memories of Daryl Henderson running all over UCF, all right? Who's with the Rams now. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
I think he just scored another touchdown.
Exactly, right. I mean, it's just running off tackle, and you're like, man, nobody's going to touch him, huh? Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's really the offensive line, which doesn't, and I like to give those guys credit because they don't get enough credit. But they're the offensive line and what Silverfield's been able to do with that has really been the class of the conference, and that's why you have a lot of guys that are lining up just to run behind that offensive line. Thomas is who's next. We'll see. He has a unique set of skills, kind of different from a lot of the other running backs that we have, closer to a bruiser than anything else. So he's hard to tackle in the fourth quarter because you just don't want to. And that's going to be watch the end of the game and how Memphis has been winning games is really clock control. And he's been a vital part to that.
He's like, I have a certain set of skills. I will find you and I will run you over.
Right. He's definitely, he's a monster back there. And the thing about him, though, he's not as elusive as some of the other backs we've had. He's not as elusive. So early in the game, when everybody's, all healthy and flying around the field, you won't see him break too many runs off. That's usually when we're doing screens and everything else, trying to wear out the defense. It's in that second half, third quarter, where you're like, do I have to tackle this guy? Have to tackle this guy. And safeties get put in a position and corners get put in a position where they have to make a business decision. Like, if I hit this guy too hard, I'm not playing the next game. I'm out with an injury. Let me just swipe at his feet or something like that. And that's basically the way that we've been winning a lot of these games. Is and the only team that this year that's actually matched that was UTSA, where they're like, okay, we'll see your running game with our own running game and really out Memphis in that game.
That sounds like a future conference rival there to me, doesn't it, Drew? There,
I'm just saying.
They're okay. They earned our respect. They're okay. The other teams coming in, UAB. Okay, there's history there.
But that and correct me if I'm wrong. And from your point of view, that's the most complete program that's coming in. Is UAB's?
I think so.
They've got
run down the teams that are coming in again.
So you got UAB.
I've been trying to not look at that.
You got UAB. You got the Blazers coming back. You got Charlotte joining in. You got North Texas, UTSA, as they went Texas Spurge there. Mm-hmm. Rice. That's a little rough.
Oh, there's the face palm.
There's that's a tough one for you.
The carbohydrate.
It's a good baseball program though.
Yeah.
And then Florida Atlantic. That's the other team. So those are your six.
Rice has probably the most beautiful campus. I've been on their campus.
Me too. Yeah,
it's a beautiful campus. But sports programs. The Florida Atlantic. I guess, they have a good football program. Basketball, it's not good. None of these teams are basketball teams other than UAB, right? And UAB hasn't really amounted to a lot since they were beating Kentucky, Squeaky Johnson, and then we're beating Kentucky.
Oh, Squeaky. I love Squeaky Johnson. I love Squeaky. Yeah. I covered him.
That's back in the Mike Davis days, isn't it?
Yeah. The Mike Davis days, man. That's back in the day. But yeah, it's they haven't really been that much of a program. I guess they could be if they didn't have Alabama trying to shut them down. They could have been a lot farther than they are. But they're on the rebuild. I think they have a They did something to their stadium.
They have a new stadium. They got a new stadium, though. They're going to be good. They're going to be good. But I want to bring this up because you bring a great point here, and this is the thing that bothers me about all this movement. It's all football motivated.
It's
all television related, like broadcast partners and things like that.
That's right.
Memphis, basketball's been hurt by this from the Americans' perspective, and Memphis prides itself on basketball. What is the mood right now from a Memphis fan standpoint, not only about the teams that are coming in, but as a result of UCF and Houston and Cincinnati going to the Big 12? Is there hope they can join later? What's the mood?
So Cincinnati and Houston leaving is, for basketball, that's probably the worst thing this conference could see. I mean, they still have Wichita State here, but I mean, seriously, it was really us four kind of holding the mantle around. That have been to Final Fours and everything else. When UConn was in the conference, UConn was obviously the only one that won a championship from the ACC or the AAC. Basketball is going to be, this is Conference USA 2.0. It's Conference USA 2.0.
It's the Calipari era all over again.
Basically. And except this time, switch out coach, put in Anthony Hardaway, and it's Conference USA 2.0. That being said, Memphis, the thing about Memphis is it's kind of, I don't know how to explain this. It's almost impervious to whatever conference we're in because we've been in so many ridiculous conferences. I mean, from the Great Midwest Conference. I don't know if you the Metro. I mean, we've been in a lot
Metro,
of.
Yeah,
remember the Metro?
This is kind of becoming Metro 2.0. If you think about it.
I mean, almost. Well, no, there's not really that great.
No, there's no Louisville, Florida State in there. No George McCloud. Come on now.
Right. So, the Metro was a really good basketball conference, and that's when basketball was kind of running things. The Great Midwest Conference USA. It started off well, but then when Cincinnati and Louisville took off to the Big East without us, we were like, well, wait. So from our perspective, we're always the ones left behind. We're used to this. Because of that, we're probably one of the only programs that have a deep enough pockets to survive nonsense like this. I mean, there's 3 Fortune 250 companies right there: AutoZone, International Paper, FedEx, and all of them have deep pockets and a lot of money into our program. So we're fine. Booster wise, we're fine. We're not going to really suffer too much from the program's kind of insulated from whether or not we have any conference revenue coming in, just because we've kind of built our program around, hey, what happens if nothing happens? Let's go after these big pockets. Let's make sure that they're heavily invested in our program. And that's kind of that's also why we don't really play in our own facilities. I mean, when I was there, the Pyramid, I was still watching games in the Pyramid. Now it's a Bass Pro Shop. And, now we're playing at FedEx Forum. We're always playing in something else, and we're, leasing or contracting out other things other than our own facilities. Because that's just kind of how we built the program. We built the program to kind of be like mercenaries, just a mercenary team, just to go around to jump from conference to conference, because that seems like the life cycle for Memphis.
Let me make one quick clarification before we wrap things up.
Sure.
When I mean the Metro 2.0, I mean like comparing Coca-Cola versus New Coke.
Oh, boy. Unbelievable. All right. Well, we hope you'll be joining us in the Big 12 down the road, but that's, we could spend hours on that. For now, let's focus on the present.
You'll go to the ACC.
Yeah, okay, yeah, right.
We probably will go to the ACC.
All right.
I know that's where a lot of the boosters want to go.
Last thing, we got about 2 minutes. Your keys to the game is what?
UCF will have to hold Memphis under 200 yards rushing to win this game. Period. We've been winning games with ball control late in those third quarters, fourth quarter. It's been nothing but ball control and then Seth throwing over the top. It's worn out defenses. UCF is usually the most or the best condition defense we usually play every year. So I don't expect them to be worn out, but I'm not sure if they have the personnel to actually continue to tackle Thomas throughout that fourth quarter. But if UCF wins, they've held Memphis to under 200 yards rushing.
62.5 points, over or under.
Ooh.
There's a good one.
I'll take the under. It's a night game. I'll take the under on that.
All right. I feel you on that.
Very good. Very good. All right, Memphis Spence, tell the audience where they can find you and your great content. You've had Drew on your show many a times, and we certainly appreciate that. Tell the audience where they can find you.
Sports Radio America. It's our 10th year anniversary. We've over there, we help raise up broadcasters directly out of communications programs and in different college universities around the nation. I've been trying to spearhead that and have been the leader of that for the last 8 years. And that's where you can find all of my content. Noon to 2 Eastern, Monday through Thursday. Still do a live streaming radio show. And a lot of, there are some boosters that actually have some net worth behind them that still definitely tune in and listen to that show around the nation. So come check it out. It's a lot of it may be boring. I'm kind of a boring guy, but I like to tell the truth and I like to get down to the nitty gritty and a lot of subject matter.
Well, we found you not boring.
No, we are excited to
boring.
We're glad to have you on, and we'll try to get you back on maybe during basketball season because we got to definitely get it hardcore into the basketball season. But
absolutely.
In the meantime, enjoy the game on Friday night best you can, and if you run into Drew, then feel free to do whatever you want to Drew. That's all.
Eric, Drew,
God, please don't hurt me.
Well, no, there's no hurt now. I will have to actually find my way over to one of your barbecues. Because I am a connoisseur of barbecue, right? Now, I'm Memphis Spence. I'm a connoisseur of barbecue, so I got to check out everybody's barbecue.
Oh man, I'm still learning the game. Only did one tenderloin so far, and there was things I could do better on it. So give me some time. Let me work some skills.
Yeah, listen, I've been
come back.
Look, I've been to Memphis. You're gonna be disappointed either way. I've been there.
Disappointed.
That's one of the things I'm gonna miss here. I'm gonna miss. You got to come back. You got to join the Big 12. I love going to Memphis.
You need to send us Corky's sauce.
Yes, some Corky's. Oh, Corky's is great. Central Barbecue. Mwah.
Oh my
Great
goodness!
Stuff,
all right, now you get me hungry. All right, well, that's Memphis Spence joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this show. You're listening to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Eric Lopez here with you. Drew Glukoff taking the segment off. He's carried the load today, so giving a segment off. Let's talk some Olympic sports, some interesting topics here. Let's start with men's soccer. Men's soccer coming off a dramatic 2-1 win against their rivals in Dallas at SMU. Huge come-from-behind victory for them on Saturday night. The Knights are receiving votes in the polls in men's soccer. They are 38 in the RPI. They're on top of first place in the American at 5-1 with Tulsa. UCF is 7-4 overall on the season. Tulsa is 5-1. Memphis and SMU are tied at 3-3. So there's a bit of a gap there for them. Huge win for the Knights to beat Tulsa and SMU back. They, remember a couple of weeks ago, their RPI was in the hundreds. That's how quickly things could change. And they're back in first place. I looked at some of the men's soccer sites. They are projected to make the NCAA tournament. Them and Tulsa right now would be a 2-bid league. Tulsa has a great RPI. I think they're in the top 10. Big win for them. I think they've settled some things there in the goalkeeping situation for men's soccer. Levine was honorable mention. Luca Dorados continues to have a great season, 10 goals on the year. Nick Taylor, who there's a feature on Nick Taylor on Black and Gold Banneret right now.com by Bryson Turner. In-depth feature on Nick Taylor. That SMU match was a return for Nick Taylor, who played at SMU and now is playing at UCF, part of that big rivalry. Bryson did an in-depth interview with Nick as well. He talked to the coaches. Really, I recommend to read up on Nick Taylor there. But UCF's playing very well, and they're on top of the American Conference as they get set to play Temple this weekend. And they got to keep the momentum going. You look at the remaining schedule for UCF men's soccer: at Temple on Friday, host South Florida on Wednesday, October 27th, and then the big one, Halloween night, hosting SMU, and then at Tulsa, November the 5th. That could decide the regular season championship. And that is significant because whoever wins the regular season title will host the conference tournament. There will be no changing at the last minute of, hey, you can't host because you're leaving the league and take it away. No. Whoever wins the regular season will host the tournament. So that's a big stretch for UCF. Now, we spoke obviously with Memphis Spence throughout the show about the American Conference and the news about them realignment, adding 6 schools from Conference USA. That impacts UCF, believe it or not. And that's because men's soccer situation, as far as their future, is still up in the air. The Big 12 does not sponsor men's soccer. So UCF would prefer to be in the American. That's what Terry Mohajir told our very own Jeff Sharon at the press conference when they announced that they were going to the Big 12. But that's not a guarantee. We don't know if they'll be able to stay in the American. Now, of those 6 members from Conference USA that the American is going to get, Charlotte, FAU, and UAB are the members that play men's soccer. So in reality, from a men's soccer standpoint, they will be up to 3 teams. But the interesting thing about this was when you looked at the UCF options prior to this, your thinking was either they stay in the American if they can, which is their preference. If they cannot stay in the American, Conference USA would be the next spot. They're basically neck and neck in RPIs. They're a very strong league. FIU's had a great year. Marshall's the defending national champions in men's soccer. But there's a really serious question, and we didn't get into this with Memphis Spence or later. We got plenty of time for this down the road to see how it plays out. But does Conference USA exist in the next couple of years? What's going to happen to Marshall? There are reports, speculation that that Marshall, for example, could end up in the Sun Belt if the Sun Belt decides to expand. Southern Miss could join. So what I'm saying is, you've got a situation here where I think the sport that's going to get impacted the most, and perhaps negatively, not just at UCF, but across the sport, is men's soccer. There's a lot of questions of where these schools. Now, remember, the Conference USA men's soccer includes members like Kentucky and South Carolina. West Virginia was supposed to join, is supposed to join as well. Those, so in theory, UCF could join those teams and they could still have Conference USA men's soccer, but it will look completely different. This is a developing story, and keep that in mind as this constant movement continues, because this will impact UCF in some ways. Even if, we're leaving for the Big 12, that's correct. But men's soccer, where is men's soccer's home going to be in the future is very, very important, because that could impact this program. They're on a roll right now. And this could derail it with the wrong, if things go wrong. Not saying it will, but it is something to monitor. And we don't really have a timetable. We haven't been told yet, when this is all going to go down. I would assume a decision would have to be made within the next year on where men's soccer will be. Will they stay in the American? Will they go somewhere else? And if so, is it Conference USA or is it somewhere else? I don't. Their options are not great beyond Conference USA, if Conference USA still even exists. And if they want to continue men's soccer, there could be a lot of movement as far as conferences are concerned. And it'll be interesting. You would think the American would want to keep UCF. It's a good brand in men's soccer. They have other schools in other sports, like they have Florida, for example, in lacrosse and things like that. But to be determined on that. So that's the latest on men's soccer. Women's soccer, as we move over to them, they are returning. They're receiving votes. They had the bye last week. They're 6-5-1. They will be at East Carolina on Thursday, and then we'll be hosting Temple on Sunday, and then we'll finish the regular season at Cincinnati on October the 28th. In my opinion, these are 3 must-wins for UCF. The room for margin is thin. Their RPI is 41. Now, I think they are still in the tournament. In fact, Chris Henderson, who covers some of the people that cover women's soccer in depth, a lot closer. Chris Henderson being one of them is the guy I got to go to. He goes in depth. He's at Chris_AWK. Is one of the best in covering women's soccer. We've had him on this show in the past. In his latest projections, he has UCF among the last teams in. He's got 4 teams in from the American. The American has never had 4 teams in. UCF, the thing they have going for them, because we had a question, people asked me about this on social media about UCF, about their chances to make the tournament right now. Here's the thing they have going for them. They have a win against Ole Miss, who's in the top 10 in RPI. They have a win against Penn State, who's in the top 15 in RPI. Those are 2 strong resume wins. They also have a draw against SMU. To me, if they win out and win their last 3 games, they're going to make the conference tournament under that scenario. They would top 6, remember, make the conference tournament right now. Now, UCF currently 1-3-1 in the league. If you look at the 6th spot, it's Temple at 2-3. But again, UCF had a front-loaded schedule. They got to win out. They got to win out, though. If you win out, likely you'll be in the tournament. I think that would be good enough. But if you slip up in one of those 3 matches, you may have to get to the conference tournament final. That is how thin this is. Because the problem is the 3 opponents that UCF has left do not have great RPIs. And if you drop one of those, that will hurt your RPI and probably keep you out. Memphis likely to be in, SMU likely to be in, South Florida likely to be in from women's soccer. Although South Florida is a bit of a bubble, who knows? But I think if you look at the women's soccer picture in the American, that is something to monitor. They have to win. You can't, no room for error. Again, Ole Miss number 6 in the RPI, Penn State 14, SMU 21. That's good results for UCF. South Florida, by the way, 30 in the RPI currently. Memphis 39, UCF 41. So those are all good numbers. But again, look at the upcoming opponents, some of the other members in the league of note. East Carolina, 67. All right. You've got Cincinnati, 73. And this is the one that really hurts. Temple, 155. If you don't get a win against Temple, you're going to drop RPI just by playing Temple, because that's how flawed the RPI is. You could play a team like Temple and win 800-0, and you're still going to drop because they hurt you from an RPI standpoint, from a schedule strength standpoint, etc. But you must win. Heck, a cancellation of that game would not be the worst thing in the world, to be honest. But if you lose, if you do not get a win, if you play and don't get a win, if you get a draw or a loss, that is tough. So they must win that game. They must win all these 3, in my opinion. You win these 3 matches if you're women's soccer, and I think there's more room for error. They would likely be in the top 6 in the league, maybe host the first round of the conference tournament. You get a win there, you're probably in. You lose one of these next 3 matches, you could be on the outside looking in. So very, very critical next week for the UCF women's soccer team and their aspirations for the NCAA tournament. Speaking of aspirations, volleyball. UCF coming off a sweep against Temple on the road, 3-0. Yet, despite that, UCF goes from being a 19 in the RPI to 28 in the RPI. You're like, well, that's kind of crazy. Well, part of the problem, just like I talked about with women's soccer, it's the quality of opponents. And the thing that's hurting UCF right now in the American is there's no team in the top 50 in the RPI currently other than UCF. The second best team in the American RPI-wise is Wichita State at 55. That's a problem because you're not going to get quality games versus other teams in front of you. For example, a Miami, who's 15 in the RPI currently. A Florida State, which is 21 in the RPI. Hypothetically, we've been through this, UCF's chances of hosting are pretty much a long shot at this point, even if they win out, because they're just not going to get enough wins, quality wins in conference at this point. They would have to basically win out to have a shot. As a result, if they don't host, they're going to be on the road, probably at Miami, probably at Florida State, and you're probably going to have to play Florida in the first round unless Florida gets hot and maybe host. Maybe some teams get shipped out of the state. But that's the thing. UCF right now looks like a team that's going to be on the road for the NCAA tournament. The good news is they are 1 game up in the standings. Houston was upset by SMU last weekend, which actually hurts UCF. That's the other reason why UCF dropped in the RPI, because Houston was in the 40s when they beat UCF a couple weeks ago, but was upset by SMU. And as a result, Houston dropped to 63 in the RPI, which hurts UCF from a quality loss standpoint. So I know it's complicated, but this is why I've been very outspoken to the other sports. Men's and women's basketball got rid of the RPI. They went to a net system. They went into quad systems, quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4. Quad 1 was quality, top, I think it's like top 1 to top 50 or whatever. Quads 2s. You basically endorses you to play as many quad 1s and quad 2 games and avoid playing quad 4 games, which are teams like in the 150s and 200s. Try to keep it as less as possible. They just do different variations. You're not going to get punished in the net system by playing a team, by beating a team in 3 sets. That's what they're trying to avoid. And my question is, if basketball, men's and women's, believes that the RPI is not good enough for them to help them select the field in the tournament, why should the other sports, volleyball, soccer, baseball, softball, you name it, why do they think the RPI is good enough for them? So that's the thing that's very frustrating from that standpoint. But it's still here, and they're still going to use it. And we shall see how they kind of unfolds there from that standpoint. As I mentioned, volleyball, they will continue their 4-game road trip after the win against Temple, as they will be at SMU, who I just mentioned upset Houston last weekend, and then they will be at Memphis on Sunday before returning home on October 29th to host Tulsa. The good news for UCF is after this weekend, if you look at the schedule, they've got 6 of their last 10 matches at home. So in fact, 6 of their next 8 will be at home before they finish the regular season on the road at Houston and Tulane. So again, this team trying to go for a 4-peat, just like men's soccer. Now, for more updates on UCF Olympic sports, make sure you check out blackandgoldbanneret.com and Bryson Turner's weekly article, Nightcap, where he breaks down all the UCF Olympic sports. Make sure you go there and read up on some of the other sports developments, not just the sports we've covered on this show. He covered women's tennis, hosting ITA regionals, men's golf, Johnny Travali having a successful run at a tournament, finishing runner-up, cross-country coming up on the horizon as well. He covers all of that, as men's golf was in Islesworth, cross-country finished their regular season. All those details are on Nightcap, which you can read on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out Drew Glukoff, NFL alums. Matthew Wright, big week, beating the Dolphins with 2 big field goal kicks. Now the starting kicker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Good for him at the Dolphins' expense. Make sure you check out his work there. He'll also have the knee-jerk reactions Friday night after the UCF Memphis game. We will be on the air night shift after the game on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe there and like us on YouTube with me and Bryson Turner. We hope to maybe have a special guest for that show. We'll see. But we'll be on afterwards. Drew will be at the press box covering the game. He'll write his knee-jerk column after the game. That'll be on blackandgoldbanneret.com as we cover the Memphis game there as well. Make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms, including Twitter at UCF_Banneret, and like us on Facebook as well, to say the least. So that should be a lot of fun. And again, UCF_Banneret, where you can follow us on Twitter. You can like us as well on Facebook. All right, that will do it for this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Thanks to Memphis Spence for joining us on this edition, as well as Andrew Glukoff. And I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.